Could YouTube's free movie shelf be hiding better films than half the paid streamers right now? That sounds ridiculous, until you see the titles sitting there with ads instead of subscription walls. In this countdown, we're digging through legendary comedies, wartime dramas, courtroom classics, thrillers, and modern favorites that feel like buried treasure. But one movie on this list makes the word free almost unbelievable. Number 15. The Story of G.I. Joe, 1945. This is not the kind of war movie that marches in waving flags. It crawls through mud, exhaustion, fear, and quiet heroism. The story of G.I. Joe follows the experience of American infantrymen through the eyes of war correspondent Ernie Pyle, played with weary humanity by Burgess Meredith. Instead of turning combat into spectacle, the film studies the small emotional details: tired faces, nervous jokes, homesick letters, and men trying to stay human while history crushes them from every side. That is why it still feels different from many wartime dramas of its era. It does not glamorize battle. It respects the ordinary soldiers who carried it. Robert Mitchum's performance gave the film extra weight, showing leadership not as loud bravery, but as quiet endurance. For viewers used to modern action-heavy war films, this one may feel startlingly intimate. Its power comes from restraint. Free on YouTube, it feels less like entertainment and more like a preserved memory. Number 14. Hangmen Also Die, 1943. A wartime thriller directed by Fritz Lang should never feel this overlooked. Yet Hangmen Also Die sits like a shadowy secret from Hollywood's anti-Nazi era. The film was inspired by the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich, one of the most feared Nazi officials in occupied Europe, and Lang turns that historical tension into a gripping moral nightmare. Instead of simple heroics, the movie builds suspense around resistance, betrayal, silence, and sacrifice. Every room feels watched. Every conversation feels dangerous. That is classic Lang, paranoia with purpose. What makes the film fascinating is how quickly it was made while the war was still happening, giving it an urgency that polished history dramas often lack. It was not looking backward with comfort. It was reacting to evil in real time. The result is sharp, angry, and atmospheric. For viewers who think old wartime films are dusty, this one has teeth. It is propaganda, yes, but propaganda made by a master of suspense. Number 13. His Girl Friday, 1940. Some comedies age softly. His Girl Friday still talks faster than most modern movies think. Directed by Howard Hawks, this legendary newsroom comedy throws Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell into a storm of ambition, romance, manipulation, and rapid-fire dialogue that practically invented a rhythm later filmmakers kept chasing. The story centers on a newspaper editor trying to win back his ex-wife and star reporter just as she plans to leave journalism behind. But the real thrill is not just the plot, it is the velocity. Characters interrupt, overlap, dodge, attack, flirt, and scheme like language itself has become a boxing match. Rosalind Russell is electric, matching Grant beat for beat and often stealing the scene outright. Beneath the comedy, there is a sly critique of media hunger, professional obsession, and people who cannot stop chasing the next big story. That makes it feel surprisingly modern. His Girl Friday is not just funny. It is proof that speed, wit, and chemistry never expire. Number 12. The Gold Rush, 1925. Before blockbusters needed explosions, Charlie Chaplin proved a starving man, a cabin, and a pair of boots could become immortal cinema. The Gold Rush is one of Chaplin's most beloved silent masterpieces, blending slapstick comedy with loneliness, survival, and emotional tenderness. As the little tramp wanders into the harsh world of the Klondike, the film turns desperation into comedy without ever mocking suffering. That is Chaplin's strange genius. He makes hunger funny, then suddenly makes it heartbreaking. The famous boot-eating scene is still iconic because it works on two levels at once. It is absurd, but it also reveals a character trying to survive with dignity when dignity is almost all he has left. The film's snowy landscapes, cabin gags, and delicate romantic longing show why Chaplin became more than a comedian. He was a storyteller who understood human weakness. The Gold Rush is not just old cinema history. It is emotional craftsmanship disguised as comedy. Number 11. Modern Times, 1936. Modern Times looked at the machine age and asked a question that still hurts. What happens when progress forgets the people trapped inside it? Charlie Chaplin's film arrived during the Great Depression, and its comedy is built around factories, unemployment, hunger, automation, and the strange humiliation of trying to survive in a system that treats workers like moving parts. The little tramp gets swallowed by gears, chased by authority, and pushed from one desperate situation to another. Yet the film never becomes hopeless. Its brilliance is in the balance. Hilarious physical comedy on the surface, social criticism underneath. Chaplin does not lecture. He turns pressure into motion, fear into rhythm, and hardship into unforgettable images. The factory sequence alone remains one of cinema's sharpest visual jokes about industrial life. Modern Times feels shockingly relevant because its central fear has not disappeared. People still worry about work, machines, poverty, and dignity. That makes it more than a classic. It is a warning with a smile. Number 10. The Great Dictator, 1940. Charlie Chaplin did something dangerous here. He turned one of history's ugliest political shadows into a target for ridicule before the world fully understood the scale of the horror. The Great Dictator was Chaplin's bold satirical attack on fascism, tyranny, propaganda, and the absurd vanity of dictators. Playing both a persecuted Jewish barber and the dictator Adenoid Hinkle, Chaplin used comedy as a weapon, exposing how ridiculous power can look when stripped of fear. But the film is not only remembered for parody, its emotional force comes from the famous final speech, where the mask of comedy drops and Chaplin speaks directly to humanity. That moment still divides viewers. Some see it as powerful, others as unusually direct. Either way, it is impossible to ignore. The film matters because it shows cinema refusing to stay neutral when cruelty was rising. The Great Dictator is funny, brave, uneven, passionate, and historic. Free on YouTube, it feels like a gift with a warning label. Number 9. Charade, 1963. Some movies flirt, some movies chase, and Charade somehow does both while smiling like it knows a secret you do not. Audrey Hepburn plays Regina Lampert, a woman whose husband is suddenly dead, whose money has vanished, and whose life is now being circled by men who may be charming, dangerous, or both. Then Cary Grant enters the picture, bringing that effortless movie star elegance that makes every suspicion feel like a romantic complication. The brilliance of Charade is how smoothly it mixes genres. One minute it feels like a glamorous Paris romance. The next it becomes a murder mystery, then a spy thriller, then a screwball comedy with darker shadows hiding behind the jokes. Director Stanley Donen keeps the pace light, but the danger never fully disappears. Hepburn's vulnerability gives the story emotional pull, while Grant's shifting identity keeps the viewer slightly off balance. It has often been called the best Hitchcock movie Hitchcock never made, and that description fits because it has elegance, suspense, deception, and wit without losing its sparkle. Free to watch, Charade feels like finding a diamond in a drawer full of old receipts. Number 8. Rashomon, 1950. Rashomon does not simply tell a story. It puts truth itself on trial, then refuses to give the audience an easy verdict. Akira Kurosawa's landmark Japanese drama begins with a crime in the woods, but the real mystery is not only what happened. The real mystery is why every witness remembers it differently. A bandit, a woman, a dead man speaking through a medium, and a woodcutter all offer conflicting versions, each shaped by pride, shame, fear, and self-protection. That structure changed cinema forever. Before Rashomon, many films treated truth like a fixed destination. Kurosawa turned it into a battlefield. The forest scenes, shot with bold movement and piercing sunlight, feel both beautiful and unstable, as if nature itself is watching human beings lie to survive. Toshiro Mifune's wild physical performance adds danger and unpredictability, while the film's quieter moments ask deeper questions about morality. Is memory honest? Is confession reliable? Is every person secretly editing their own guilt? Rashomon remains powerful because it understands something uncomfortable. People do not only lie to others. Sometimes they lie most convincingly to themselves. Number 7. Witness for the Prosecution, 1957. A courtroom thriller should not still feel this sharp after so many decades. But Witness for the Prosecution saves its sharpest knife for the final minutes. Directed by Billy Wilder, the film turns an ordinary murder trial into a battle of intelligence, ego, performance, and deception. Charles Laughton plays Sir Wilfrid Robarts, a brilliant barrister with fragile health, a razor tongue, and a stubborn hunger for one more great legal fight. His client, Leonard Vole, is accused of murdering a wealthy widow. But the case becomes far more complicated when Vole's wife, played by Marlene Dietrich, enters the courtroom with icy control and dangerous secrets. Wilder understands that a trial is also theater. Every witness performs, every lawyer manipulates, every glance could be evidence or misdirection. The film's pleasure comes from watching certainty collapse piece by piece. Just when the audience believes it has solved the puzzle, the story twists again with almost cruel precision. That ending became legendary for a reason, and even today it feels deliciously ruthless. Witness for the Prosecution is not just a classic courtroom drama. It is a reminder that truth often arrives wearing a disguise. Number 6. Pride and Prejudice, 2005. This version of Pride and Prejudice does not treat romance like decoration. It turns every glance, silence, and almost touch into emotional combat. Joe Wright's adaptation of Jane Austen's beloved novel brings a sweeping, earthy energy to the story of Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. Keira Knightley gives Elizabeth a restless intelligence, making her sharp, proud, impulsive, and deeply human. Matthew McFadden's Darcy is not just arrogant, he is awkward, guarded, and trapped inside his own social armor. That choice makes their slow transformation feel more intimate. The film's countryside, candlelit rooms, muddy hymns, crowded dances, and long tracking shots create a world that feels alive rather than frozen behind glass. It understands that Austen's story is not only about love, it is about class pressure, family embarrassment, reputation, money, gender expectations, and the terrifying risk of being truly known. The famous rain confrontation works because both characters are emotionally exposed and completely wrong at the same time. By the end, the romance feels earned, not handed over. Pride and Prejudice remains beloved because it makes restraint feel passionate and makes one quiet confession hit harder than 1,000 dramatic speeches. Number 5. Little Shop of Horrors, 1986. Only a movie this strange could turn a singing plant, a failing flower shop, and a hungry nightmare into one of the most lovable cult musicals ever made. Little Shop of Horrors begins in a grim little corner of Skid Row, where Seymour, a nervous florist's assistant, discovers a mysterious plant that seems to promise fame, money, attention, and escape. But Audrey, too, is not just a plant. It is temptation with leaves, a monster that feeds on human weakness as much as anything else. Rick Moranis gives Seymour a nervous sweetness that makes the story feel oddly tragic, while Ellen Green's Audrey brings heartbreak beneath the comedy. The music, adapted from the stage show, mixes doo-wop energy, dark humor, and horror movie absurdity into something wildly entertaining. What makes the film last is its balance. It is funny, catchy, colorful and outrageous, but underneath the camp is a sharp little story about ambition, exploitation, and the price of wanting a better life too badly. Little Shop of Horrors feels like a joke until it bites, and once Audrey 2 starts singing, the movie becomes almost impossible to forget. Number 4. Catch Me If You Can, 2002. A teenager pretending to be a pilot sounds like a joke, until Catch Me If You Can turns that fantasy into one of the slickest cat and mouse stories of modern Hollywood. Steven Spielberg takes the real-life legend of Frank Abagnale Jr. and transforms it into a stylish chase across airports, hotels, hospitals, banks, and lonely hotel rooms where the glamour slowly starts to crack. Leonardo DiCaprio plays Frank with movie star charm, but also with a sadness that keeps slipping through the disguise. He is not just a clever fraudster collecting checks and uniforms. He is a broken kid trying to outrun a collapsing family. Tom Hanks gives the film its emotional counterweight as Carl Hanratty, the FBI agent who hunts Frank with stubborn patience and an almost fatherly obsession. The magic of the movie is how it seduces you with fun, then quietly makes you feel the cost of living as someone else. The fake identities are thrilling, the cons are clever, and the period detail gives everything a polished golden glow. But underneath all that movement is a lonely question. How long can a person keep running before the mask becomes heavier than the truth? That is why Catch Me If You Can still plays beautifully. It is not just about escape, it is about being found. Number 3. The Truman Show, 1998. The Truman Show used to feel like science fiction. Now it feels like a warning that arrived early and waited for the rest of us to catch up. Jim Carrey plays Truman Burbank, a cheerful insurance salesman living inside what he believes is a normal seaside town. But every street, every neighbor, every sunrise, and even his marriage are part of a gigantic television set built around his life. The terrifying brilliance is that Truman is not trapped by chains. He is trapped by comfort, routine, advertising, friendly faces, and the fear of questioning the world he inherited. Peter Weir directs the film with a gentle surface and a deeply unsettling core. At first, it feels funny and quirky, but the more Truman notices cracks in reality, the more the comedy becomes emotional claustrophobia. Ed Harris, as the godlike creator Kristoff, gives the story a chilling edge because he speaks about control as if it is love. That is the film's uncomfortable power. It asks whether a perfectly managed life is still a prison if everyone keeps smiling. Today, in an age of cameras, curated lives, and people performing themselves online, The Truman Show feels sharper than ever. Its ending remains unforgettable because freedom begins with one terrifying step into the unknown. Number 2. The Silence of the Lambs, 1991. Some thrillers scare you with shadows. The Silence of the Lambs scares you with conversations you cannot stop listening to. Jonathan Demme's film became one of the rare psychological thrillers to cross from genre hit into Oscar-winning cultural landmark, and its power still comes from precision. Jodie Foster plays Clarice Starling, an FBI trainee entering a world of institutional pressure, male judgment, and monstrous violence while trying to keep her own past from swallowing her. Anthony Hopkins, as Hannibal Lecter, is unforgettable, not because he appears constantly, but because every appearance feels dangerous, controlled, and mentally invasive. The glass between Clarice and Lecter becomes one of cinema's most intense battlefields, where politeness feels like a weapon and silence feels like a trap. But the film is more than its famous villain. It works because Clarice is not written as decoration in a horror story. She is intelligent, vulnerable, determined, and painfully aware that being underestimated may be both a threat and an advantage. The hunt for Buffalo Bill adds urgency, but the emotional center remains Clarice fighting to be heard in rooms designed to dismiss her. The Silence of the Lambs endures because it understands true suspense is psychological. The scariest door is not always the basement. Sometimes it is the mind of the person inviting you in. Number 1. It Happened One Night, 1934. Before romantic comedies became formulas, It Happened One Night built the blueprint, then made it look effortless. Frank Capra's legendary film follows a spoiled runaway heiress and a broke newspaper reporter as they travel together through Depression-era America, trading insults, secrets, and reluctant affection along the way. Claudette Colbert plays Ellie Andrews with sharp pride and hidden vulnerability, while Clark Gable gives Peter Warren a cocky, streetwise charm that never completely hides his decency. Their chemistry is the engine, but the film's real genius is its rhythm. Every argument pushes them closer. Every setback strips away privilege, ego, and performance. The famous Walls of Jericho bedroom setup turns censorship-era limitation into romantic tension, proving that suggestion can be more powerful than obviousness. What makes the film still work is how modern its emotional game feels. These are not two perfect people falling in love under soft lighting. They are stubborn, funny, proud, and constantly testing each other. The film also captured something larger, a fantasy of connection during hard times, when money, class, and status mattered, but kindness still had the final word. It Happened One Night became a landmark for a reason. It is charming, clever, influential, and still dangerously watchable. Free on YouTube, it feels less like an old movie and more like the original spark that lit a whole genre. So the next time someone says there is nothing good to watch for free, send them straight to this list. From Chaplin's fearless satire to Spielberg's slick chase, from courtroom twists to romantic legends, YouTube's free shelf is hiding real cinema history. But watch fast, because free movies do not always stay free for long.